Retail investors hold 95% of the APE float, but only 71% of AMC. Today I want to talk about how this actually happened, what this means for the AMC squeeze, and how this plays perfectly into the hands of Adam Aron's pounce. So stay tuned and let's make some money. And now I want to dive straight in with the key information. So, Jan Jack tweeted saying, at Weeble, you know you guys have messed up, right? How could you have retail shareholders owning 71.27% of AMC, and then yet have retail ownership of APE at a whopping 95.26%? He asks, will you explain how there could be such a wide discrepancy when AMC shareholders are still waiting for APE dividends? On top of that, the AMC APE dividend was a 1-to-1 distribution, and therefore for every one shareholder of AMC there should be one APE shareholder. Therefore the shareholder ownership of AMC and APE should be perfectly mirrored. If there's 95% of retail investors holding APE, there should be 95% of retail investors holding AMC. Or on the flip side, if there's 71% of retail holding AMC, there should only be 71% of retail holding APE. On top of that, many prolific YouTubers were saying that they were actually selling their APE and may have convinced their audience, their paper-handed audience, to sell some APE shares. Therefore, the retail ownership of APE, if anything, should be even less than AMC's 71%. You can see from this screenshot for APE, it's 4.74% held by institutions and 95.26% held by others, aka retail investors. And again, if we fast forward over to AMC, 28.5% is held by institutions supposedly, and 71.27% is held by others, aka retail. If it was, as it says, a 1-to-1 dividend, there should be the exact same number of shares held by retail in AMC as there was for APE. And as I said, if anything, it should be a lower percentage for APE due to these YouTubers and their paper-handed following that sold APE shares. Further has an excellent explanation, but the only brief explanation I can give is that these trading platforms and these brokerages prioritise providing APE shares to retail investors instead of to institutions. They know synthetic shares are out there in the hundreds of millions, if not in the billions, and they know that institutions and other hedge funds wouldn't really complain about not getting their APE shares. Obviously, these hedge funds are kind of all on the same side, and if they don't receive their APE dividend, they're not going to kick up a fuss like us, the retail investors, would. Therefore, they tried their hardest to make sure that as many retail investors as possible had their APE shares, and they weren't giving APE shares to institutional investors. Now, obviously, there's still millions of investors around the world, in Europe, in the UK, and in Canada, and other places that still to this day don't yet have their APE shares. They obviously prioritised giving APE to as many Americans as possible, and that's why there's so many European retail investors and institutional investors that don't yet have their APE. Birder tweeted saying, just sharing my thoughts. Adam Aron knew the perfect storm was coming. By dropping APE, he split the stock into two, knowing that AMC was mainly synthetics, so he DRS'd the APE float and gave it out as a stock dividend, knowing that not everyone was going to get their shares. This was done at the end of August, right before the implementation of Phase 6 capital requirement changes. Phase 6 changes the whole collateral requirements and margin calls are back. On top of that, APE is T0 and it also does not have an options chain, so it's much more difficult to manipulate APE, and that's why they're already on the threshold securities list. And as he said, Adam Aron's next step was to get APE on the threshold list. This would more than likely happen since there was going to be issues with delivering APE. Most of Europe still hasn't gotten their shares yet, and they can't directly buy APE shares, only fill orders out to buy them as of this morning. And this screenshot here from Alan Potter proves just that. He said, I've just spoken to my broker, which is Hargreaves Lansdown in the UK. He said they've confirmed to me that we can sell our APE shares on their platform, but we cannot buy APE shares. So therefore right now in the UK we can't buy a single share of APE, but yet there's millions of APEs out on loan. He said there's obviously something not quite right with this share issue and with the trading in the APE stock. Guys, if you haven't already, be sure to sign up to Moomoo right now using the link in the description below. Moomoo is currently giving away 13 free shares, which is the most free shares that Moomoo has ever given away. Moomoo is very easy to use, it's incredibly customizable, they've got tons of technical indicators and advanced charting tools. From Moomoo's latest customer agreement, they officially state they do not sell your order flow to market makers like Citadel, and therefore Moomoo is brilliant for buying those AMC, those APE and those GameStop shares. Back to further, he said the threshold list has to be settled in 13 days of getting on it, which either way would correlate when the FTD list for the end of August would come out in mid-September. And he said, as a side note, Webull is claiming that 95% of APE is owned by retail when only 71% of AMC is owned by retail, as I showed you in this previous screenshot. And he said this should be physically impossible because they're supposed to be issued at a 1-to-1 ratio. Not including the synthetics, retail roughly holds around 366 million shares of AMC, but around 490 million shares of APE. He said either way, that's close to a 100 million share difference, and if anything, there should be less APE shares held by retail investors due to those YouTubers and their followings that sold. He said that's a massive margin of error. Adam Aron has made numerous claims that up to his knowledge so far, there's been no proven synthetics. And he said the best way to expose something is in front of the world so that it can't be hidden away. In 8 trading days, it looks like Adam Aron has done just that and gave a factual basis to the APE theories. He thinks that we aren't done watching Adam Aron's checkmate just yet. He thinks we're only halfway there and that Adam Aron has a lot left up his sleeve. He said the rest of Adam Aron's moves, we'll see how they get played out real soon. An absolute genius. Well played move on the battlefield. Now you may have also seen the Bed Bath & Beyond CFO has just jumped off the roof of his building in New York City. Now the first thing I don't like about this is the sheer number of mainstream media outlets that are reporting his passing and trying to tie it into Bed Bath & Beyond and GameStop and AMC. As Andrew tweeted, he said, "My heart goes out to the Arnold family. Truly heartbreaking. As a reminder, please don't think you're alone. Friend or foe, please don't make a permanent decision to a temporary problem. My DMs are always open, or call the below hotline." Now, I personally think this is a very important message to spread loud and clear. If you're having a tough time and you don't think you can carry on, please just talk to anyone, whether it's a friend, whether it's a relative, or even if it's just somebody random on the side of the road, please just talk to anyone about how you feel. These mainstream media outlets are trying to make out as if the CFO has done this as a result of announcing mass layoffs and the recent loan received by Bed Bath & Beyond. They're trying to relate this jumping to the performance of Bed Bath & Beyond and trying to relate it to the stock price. I personally don't think that's a very fair representation to make whatsoever. In the past, Bed Bath & Beyond has had numerous increases and decreases in the stock price. Back in January 2021, the price ran from $26 per share up to $54 and fell back down again. Similarly, in June, it ran from $24 up to $44 and fell significantly again. Again here, back in February and March, it ran from $10 to $13 all the way to $29 and down again. This isn't the first time that Bed Bath & Beyond stock has run up and fallen, and this isn't the first time that Bed Bath & Beyond has had to announce negative news. So therefore, trying to claim the CFO jumped solely because of the performance of Bed Bath & Beyond isn't a fair representation to make whatsoever. If anything, it seems like the mainstream media are just trying to target Bed Bath & Beyond as a company and trying to convince retail investors to sell their shares. You may remember a few weeks ago, Jim Cramer tweeted a significant number of times about Bed Bath & Beyond. He said Bed Bath & Beyond need money and they need to issue and sell more stock. They need to either sell or die. Now, obviously, retail investors didn't sell their stock, so it seems like Jim Cramer's other option is now ringing true. Now, I just think this is very unfair to relate the entire reason for his jumping to the Bed Bath & Beyond stock, basically trying to convince more retail investors to sell their shares. Now, I also wanted to touch on the wider market crash, and Bracco tweeted saying if the S&P 500 wants to retest the lows, keep an eye on this massive 7% liquidity gap below from 365 to 338. Looking at the right of this chart, we can see the weighted average volume profile of where investors purchase their units in the S&P 500. We can see here there's a massive gap and very few investors holding shares or holding units purchase between 338 and 365. Basically saying that when the S&P 500 continues falling and when this resistance at $365 is broken, it's basically a free fall to 338 and below. Which all sounds very complex, but what that's basically saying is the S&P 500 basically has additional guaranteed downside and it will break past the previous low of $365. aka suggesting the market crash will continue and many more liquidations and margin calls will be seen. kohrs tweeted saying the S&P 500 is down roughly 20% from the top. The next leg down has already begun and will lead to an additional 50% decline. He said this will be a waterfall sell-off, wiping out the majority of market participants. Lights out for many. Kohrs is believing the S&P 500 will fall further and that many hedge funds and many institutions will be wiped out and will be liquidated. And on top of that, Laidback has tweeted saying the housing crisis is next. Anyway, I just hope everyone remembers why we're in this situation. It's not Ukraine's fault, it's not Russia's fault, and it's not China's fault. He said it's because these morons in charge at the Federal Reserve chose vaccine profits over macroeconomics. He said it's called greed. He said lockdowns broke the economy. Obviously, over the last few years, the Federal Reserve has printed more cash into circulation than the amount that's been printed over the last 100 years or so. They printed massive amounts of cash into the economy and gave massive amounts of this cash to businesses. Businesses then thrived and their stock prices absolutely rocketed. But obviously this is a train that has a finite ending and there's only a finite amount of cash that they could print without exploding inflation. Obviously inflation has now exploded, they are rising interest rates, but inflation is barely showing any signs of slowing down. And Laidback believes it's not just going to be the S&P 500 and the wider stock market that crashes, he thinks the housing crisis is next. But guys, be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always guys, be sure to ding that notification bell, because that way you'll be alerted when I upload a new video. Cheers.